Good evening. We'll begin with a pledge of allegiance. I invite you to join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Gary.
Here.
Pepcorn.
Here.
Preston. Here. Strand. Mahoney.
Here. Engineering. There are 4 tasks associated with the evaluation of the North Broadway Bridge. The first 2 tasks, traffic impact analysis and bridge cost estimates, were completed. The third, the geotechnical analysis, will be completed this month. The final task of collecting public input is currently underway with more than 4,000 postcards mailed to Fargo and Clay County residents with a link to the online survey. There is also a link to the survey at fargostreets.com for those who use the bridge but do not receive the mailing. Engineering will gather feedback and have a joint meeting with impacted government entities in November. We really would like public input in this from engineering because do you really want the bridge? And if we get enough input, that will help us in that. And I think the commissioners, myself, appreciate we've gotten some emails on this, but not as many as we'd expect if it's something that people really want to continue on. Chief Dirkson's here. This is Fire Prevention Week, which runs through October 9th, and the Fargo Fire Department encourages citizens to participate in a national-wide effort, which is united under the campaign, Learn the Sounds of Fire Safety. It is important to learn the different sounds of smoke and carbon monoxide alarms and know how to respond. For example, a continuous set of 3 loud beeps means smoke and fire, so get out. Call 911 and stay out. A single chirp every 30 to 60 seconds means the battery is low and must be changed, which is always the husband that seems to change the battery. I don't know. Anyway, chirping that even continues after replacing battery means the alarm is at end of life and must be replaced. The average life of the smoke alarm is about 10 years. And Chief, we're doing still pretty good preventing fires in the community?
We've been up for the last 2 years, so we need to get that down.
Okay. So we need to do better.
Yes.
Okay. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, a time to bring awareness to the importance of breast cancer screening. City Hall will be illuminated in pink this week to the observation of breast cancer awareness. Each year, more than 250,000 women in the U.S. are diagnosed with breast cancer, and more than 40,500 will die. The Women's Way program provides 3 screenings for women aged 40 to 64 who come in to meet income requirements and live in North Dakota. More information about Women's Way is available at the Fargo Cast Public Health. Library. The library's annual Jazz in the Fall concert series has started, and 3 more concerts are scheduled in October featuring local jazz artists. The library's weekly Fall Storytime series for toddlers and preschoolers starts this week and runs through November 3rd. We have 2 videos tonight highlighting our Fargo department. First, a video to introduce and help us learn about the department's new officers. Then we'll have a video recapping the 2021 Youth Activities Program, which uses outdoor activities to help foster positive relations between the youth and the department's community trust and cultural liaison officers.
Hi, my name is Christopher Cassandro. I'm from Cloquet, Minnesota. And a fun fact about myself is I played the tuba in high school.
Hi, my name is Jeff Ward. I'm from Lake Park, Minnesota. I really enjoy hiking and snowboarding when I get out there as well.
Alec Gross, Fargo, North Dakota, and I enjoy golfing.
Ben Leon, Moore, Minnesota, and I love to cut grass.
My name is Molly Richardson. I'm from West Fargo, North Dakota, and I have a dog named Winston. Hey, I'm Devin Schaefer. I'm from Williston, North Dakota, and I have a puppy named Oli at home.
My name is Jonas Duncan from Sartell, Minnesota, and North Dakota will be the 4th state I've lived in my lifetime.
I'm Titus Granule. I'm from Liberia, West Africa. I'm the first one in my family to join law enforcement.
I'm Blake Omberg. I'm originally from Holly, Minnesota, and I have gone scuba diving in the Caribbean.
Cassandra Dornacker, originally from Garrison, North Dakota, and I put my Christmas tree up on November 1st every year.
My name is Wyatt Becker. My hometown is Lake City, Minnesota, and I am in the North Dakota Air National Guard.
Started the Fargo PD Youth Outdoors program in 2019. It was a culmination of my love and passion for the outdoors. Every year I try to get as many kids as possible involved in the outdoors because it seems like it's a dying sport.
Officer Carlson and I are both avid outdoorsmen, and we both kind of feel that too many people spend too much time in front of screens, watching TV, computer, looking at their phone, and should spend some time out in the outdoors, in nature, and grow an appreciation for it. And not every kid has that opportunity, so we wanted to provide that opportunity.
What a great way to get a lot of the kids in our community involved in an activity. They're actually involved with law enforcement and other individuals that I partner with to do these activities, to learn life and social skills that will help them eventually as they become young adults themselves.
I think it's a fun program. I think it's good for kids to get out and learn these new things. And hopefully, if they learn, for example, fishing, they might bring it back to someone else in their family, and it becomes something that expands through their family and more people get involved with a certain activity. And it's a good chance for them to try out things and then find what is the best fit for you.
There's many things that I get excited for, but I mean, just when I talk to the kids and see them smile, having fun, that's what makes me happy and makes this all worth it, knowing that I'm passing something else on to these youth that hopefully when they're adults, they pass it on to their children, so they can spend that quality bonding time with them.
Very good. We had a little difference in the agenda today, and there was concerns about adding a certain item. So for some of my commissioners, there was a motion to approve the order agenda, adding additional item under item 41 to read as follows. I'll let Eric Johnson to explain this.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, commissioners. So as you know, on the agenda, I think it's at item 41 is a request by Commissioner Gehrig, along with Eric Lind, the chair of the Municipal Airport Authority, to discuss the airport. And I was asked by Commissioner Strand independently to just look into what kind of motion might be brought that could allow a reconsideration of the action at the last meeting on September 20th. We frequently, I'll give you a little bit of history on this, and I think you're probably all familiar with it, but just so everyone knows, we frequently take up a motion to reconsider. And for a long time, the internal rules that the City Commission had special rules for motions to reconsider. It allowed it to be brought a considerable time after the actual meeting where the motion being reconsidered was acted upon. That rule was changed a couple of years ago, and so there is no special rule for a motion to reconsider. We're then left with Robert's Rules of Order, which are the rules that you've adopted. And in those cases, motions to reconsider are only eligible if it's brought before you adjourn that meeting. So motion to reconsider at this point in time, since you've adjourned that meeting on September 20th, is ineligible. But a motion to rescind a prior action or a motion to amend a prior action, those are motions that can be brought at a later meeting, such as today, 2 weeks later. If that motion is made sort of sua sponte at the time of the meeting without prior notice, such a motion, rescinding or a motion to amend, would require a supermajority, a 2/3 vote. But if there is notice given, then it's a simple majority to amend. Again, last Friday, through the City Commission Executive Assistant, the notice was given of the desire. I just assumed it was Commissioner Garrick that would be making this motion, that he would be making a motion to amend the motion made at the September 20th meeting. If that carries, I expect the motion to be one where instead of eliminating the 2 mills for the airport authority, it's simply to approve the 2 mills for the airport authority. If that motion to amend were to be approved by a simple majority, then the 2 mills is approved. If not, the prior motion just is not amended and the matter dies. So is that helpful, Mayor?
That is helpful.
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask a question? To me, if we do that hypothetically, then that changes, I made the motion on the budget. And to me, that affects the budget vote as well. So I think if we vote whatever way on the mill, to me, you can't do that because that's not legal. We voted on the budget, and now to remove that part from the motion, that's not correct. And so I would challenge that. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could
Commissioner
also.
Preston.
So are you saying, Eric, that anyone can bring a motion? Because I had understood it had to be in the majority.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I meant to include that in my comments. On a motion to reconsider, yes, motion to reconsider has to be brought by someone who voted in the majority.
Yeah.
But on that's interestingly enough, that's not the case with a motion to rescind or a motion to amend a prior action. It can be brought by anybody, according to Robert's rules.
So we're splitting hairs here a little bit in that, yeah, a motion to rescind or to amend would certainly be revisiting the original motion. Yeah, it sounds like splitting hairs there a little bit. I had always understood it had to be reconsidered in any fashion. It would had to be a majority member.
Yeah. Well, all I can say is, admittedly, historically, this type of activity we've sought has always been in the form of a motion to reconsider. Again, probably because it had a special rule that applied. It said how long, it even required a waiting period of at least a month under our old rule, if you recall. But since then, yeah, that just isn't eligible. Had to look at Robert's rules to find out an alternative form of motion that accomplished the same thing, and this was it.
Mr. Chair, just one more thing.
Mr. Pepcorn.
To me, if we can do this, then you can start cherry picking things that happened that we voted on. That's not appropriate. That's not right. And I believe that's going to damage our credibility. And once again, I believe there will be a legal challenge to it. So that's my comment. Thank you.
I might be able to help with one thing.
Sure.
I think, Commissioner Pepcorn, if I may say, I think you make a valid point about the possibility of always revisiting old issues. That's certainly something that a deliberative body might want to consider. There is a rule about motions to amend that, you know, if the ship's already sailed, if you've approved something, let's say you approve a contract or something, and it's already then been signed and off, and it's already, you know, a done deal, you can't unring the bell in that case. In this particular case, because although you approved the budget without the mills, the deadline, we haven't reached the deadline yet for doing that. I did inquire of our finance director as to whether any action had been taken that couldn't be reversed. They hadn't formally done anything yet to sort of certify the mill levy over to the auditor's office. And so it's still sort of on the table, if you will. And And so I think in that sense, it's eligible. But again, your point, I think, is well taken that, you know, a motion to rescind or a motion to amend is something that could become frequently done and might be counterproductive at some point. And that's probably what brought about the motion to reconsider special rule. That had been on the books when I became city attorney. I don't know what the history is behind that particular rule that we used to have.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just clarify.
Mr. Preston.
Eric, I'm looking for what I found online, and I'm almost sure that right in Robert's rules, it says that it has to be a motion coming from the majority, and that's where I'm confused. But
Strictly in
I'm
the Robert's
okay.
Rules of Order, a motion to reconsider does have to come from the majority person on that. A motion to reconsider a previous action. Eric has differentiated this down to bring an amendment to the mill levy of the previous action. He's not having a reconsideration of the whole motion, which Commissioner Pipcorn had was the budget approved with 2 mill levy reduction of the mill levy. So in some ways, you have pulled out the 2 mill, and Dave makes a good point. You've pulled out that 2 mill element of that. But the motion to reconsider typically would be at that meeting we had, or used to be within 30 days. So this is how Eric has worked around that Robert's Rules of Order on reconsideration, I presume, Eric, right?
Yeah, I studied that very issue. I looked specifically for that because I was actually surprised to see that it wasn't a requirement.
So I have a motion to approve the order agenda, adding additional item under item 41 to read as follows. You see how that reads. I believe what I probably have to ask is a roll call vote. We normally just do a verbal vote, but.
Mr. Chairman, we don't have a motion or a second yet.
Yeah, at this time I'm saying, is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
So excuse me.
Go ahead.
Let me clarify. Are we, one of the items that I've been concerned about is that we have agenda items that are being added to the agenda after the deadline. Now, either that's a rule or it isn't. And if it is, typically or realistically, number 41 should be pulled out of the agenda, approved separately, and added to the end of the agenda. That would be the only concern I would have here.
Well, I believe on that sometimes, maybe Kimber can comment, is we sometimes put the agenda items where they're in the area of full discussion. And I think Leafa was just trying to get it close to where we were going to discuss the airport issue and then vote after it. If your preference is to have it at the end of the agenda, I have no objection.
But Mr. Chairman, I think the issue is that it requires a majority vote of approval to get it on the agenda.
Yes, I believe that.
So, Mr. Chair, I just want to add, so it was added at about 4:30 on Friday, another highly inappropriate thing. So when you start adding all these up together, it's not a good thing. It's a lot of red flags going up, as if there aren't enough already with the airport authority. So to me, this whole thing, this should never happen. To me, it bastardizes the budget vote. Because to me, if you take out that, I made the motion, that's part of the budget vote. To me, we should have to revisit the whole thing again instead of just cherry picking. We just want to do this. You can't do that. So that's my opinion. Thank you.
Commissioner Garrett.
The item was placed on the agenda before the deadline. The clarification was made by Eric later. So to say that this was not on the agenda is not correct. This 41, the way it says directly, was on the agenda prior to Thursday at noon.
Okay, then, Mr. Chairman, then I apologize. I misunderstood because I got the email at 4:30. So.
Mr. Chair, just to clarify, that's absolutely true. The discussion, I have no problem with the discussion, but the motion and the actual added things to make the motion about removing it, that was done at 4 o'clock on Friday. So I don't disagree with you. That is true. Thank you.
So Eric, just to clarify, it would appear to me that the motion is, as Commissioner Preston says, is to add item 41. And then after that, we would go to a motion to approve the agenda. Is that correct?
Well, item 41 itself is and was on the agenda that was, was on the agenda prior to the noon Thursday deadline. It's just The addition that was sent out late Friday afternoon was just this notice of the intention for this motion to be made. This particular motion being to amend a previously acted upon item. So you had notice in advance of today's meeting of it. And that's, frankly, that is to deal with the need for, if you were to bring it up at the meeting without prior notice, then it's a simple majority that's needed to approve that motion to amend. Otherwise, it's a supermajority. So it is significant.
Any other discussion? So are we been voting on the agenda today with item 41, basically?
41A, actually. What you received late Friday was just the addition of that sub-item A, which was the fact that there was notice of an intent to ask.
So we only need one vote agenda moving forward, right?
Correct.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Gary.
Yes.
Strand.
Yes.
Pepcorn.
No.
Preston.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the September 20th, 2021 regular and special meetings?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items 1 through 37?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Strand.
Yes.
Gary.
Yes.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Preston.
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. We're now having resident comments. Individual speaking first would be Christopher Cohen.
Yeah, Christopher Cohen, I'm a resident of Fargo, and I wanted to talk tonight about the wildlife management program. So on March 27th, the City Commission received a letter from the City Attorney's Office that explained that Chief Zabolski determined that, quote, an increase in city population now places many identified hunting areas within or adjacent to bike paths and a large number of people and pets. And then on June 1st, Chief Zabolski was here and said that the South parks are now much more developed than in 2006. And I went and I've explored a lot of these parks along the river myself, and I noted that even some of the most heavily used parks, like the Orchard Glen Park, it's very, very busy this time of year on the weekend. In 2006, when this program started, it didn't even have the parking lot that's there right now, and all the trails that are there that are heavily used. And to me, the main problem here is that the bow hunting itself is incompatible with all the other uses of the park. It really shouldn't be happening when you have people and pets and children in the same vicinity, because it's just inherently unsafe. There was an accident. There have been comments that I've heard that there's been no accidents at all, but there was a child who stepped on one of the arrowheads, and that's one of these stainless steel arrowheads, and stepped on it, and there's actually been 144 of these that have been lost, not found, and these essentially, they never rust, and they balance on 2 points on their side, and so one point will always be aimed upward, and they'll just about stay sharp and pointed forever once they're in the environment. So it's, though, not just safety, but it's also perception of safety. So when I've been there talking to people, they said, yes, they've been concerned when they see the signs that say there's hunting there. Thank you.
Richard Thomas.
Richard Thomas, longtime Fargo resident. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, for this opportunity to speak about the Wildlife Management Program. This summer, the Chief of Police came before you and asked that the program be discontinued because he found it to be ineffective and that circumstances had changed. The growth of the population in the city of Fargo, but more importantly, the fact that the parks system has done such a wonderful job in developing our nature parks that they're now much more heavily used than they were at that point. And so because of that, there's a real safety concern because of the interaction of the hunters and the public in the parks. At that time, there was a study group formed to look into this, and I found it interesting that of that study group, it was all hunters and people who were participants in the program, pretty much no general park user input. So for the last few weeks, I've been spending some time in the nature parks, talking to people who use the parks, and I found that there's a lot of people who are very uncomfortable with the hunting program going on in the nature parks for 5 months a year. One individual told me that he saw somebody in one of the tree stands and he said, it really creeped me out. A lot of people tell me that they're just very uncomfortable with it. And some people say this just is not right. One gentleman with his wife and 2 children said, who came up with this? This is insane. So I talked to the police department and I asked if I had a rabbit in my backyard that was eating my garden, could I use my BB gun? And he said, and they told me no weapons of any kind can be discharged in the city limits, not even a BB gun. But yet an arrow with a broadhead is considered a deadly weapon. So the park system has done a beautiful job in developing these parks. I think their emphasis should be on improving the nature parks. They're a low-cost park option. Many hundreds of people get to enjoy the parks, and so I think that the risk is just too high to continue the hunting program in the parks while people are in the parks. And on September the 7th, I turned in about 139 petition signatures, and tonight I have an additional couple hundred for a total of about over 330 right now. So if I can bring those up to you. Thank you very much.
Wes Philome. Thank you.
Wes Philome, he, him, his pronouns. I'd like to start by saying long live George Floyd and Anue Machick. Over the past year and a half, our city has taken many performative steps to address the divisive culture of our city, including passing hate crime ordinances. Despite these steps, my eyes have continued to focus on what our response is when confronted with actual hate. It's the most important step that matters: how we respond to hate. A young group of Black children went to play basketball at a public court. Each time they were confronted by a white woman who would scream racial slurs at them. Their parents contacted Fargo PD but were advised that it's a freedom of speech. A neighbor agreed to let them use his basketball hoop to play there. But shortly after, his neighbor, Larry Baldner, would go on to not only call these children of color racial slurs, he stated their skin was the color of human feces. He grabbed an 11-year-old by the neck and her hair, ripping out 6 of her braids from the back of her head. When her 12-year-old sister tried to help her, he assaulted her and broke her nose. He was then arrested, but not charged with a hate crime. When the mother called Fargo PD about lodging a hate crime complaint, she was told by the officer that we don't have hate crime laws in our city. When she told him she was staring at the language right on the our government website, the city government's website, he placed her on hold and came back aware that they actually existed. Only after that call has the family started to see more diligence from our PD. If not for me and Faith showing up on their doorstep, this family would feel no support from their community. They're forced to live 4 doors down from a man who assaulted 2 children. Their bus stop is right in front of his house. They've suffered traumatic injuries and events and physical as well, and they haven't heard from our city. They haven't felt supported by our city. I'm asking the commission to reach out to the family to show support and to also provide them with mental health services so that they can get through this traumatic event. Thank you.
Brandon Krieger.
Good afternoon. I do want to preface this that I'm again new to following city politics and not aware of the airport previous history with the council. But I've done my research from what I can find. But so myself and I and others I've consulted feel that the striking the 2 mil from the airport was a very rushed and rash decision. Fargo is a city seeing unprecedented growth. I felt Commissioner Garrick spelt it out over the last few meetings about how the airport operates with its finances. Last month, we added another airline that flies into Fargo. Now we just cut the funding that would have been useful to improve it and expand the airport gates and other functions. Do I agree with everything that's been done at the airport? No. Do I think there needs to be a parkade at the airport at this point? Probably. But I feel that this vote has been done more of spite, especially knowing 2 mils have been the standard for many years to put towards the airport. Updated facilities are needed for Fargo to maintain its current growth and expansion, also for the benefit of its citizens. I myself just came back from a vacation where I had to drive to Minneapolis to get a flight because my family could afford it from Minneapolis. Moving forward with the city growth, putting money into the airport to bring in other airlines is a positive for Fargo and what Fargo residents need. We must continue to grow and expand our infrastructure in order to meet the expansion of Fargo and for the families settling here for the foreseeable future. Thank you.
Now we'll go to public input opportunity. Tia Braceth is going to explain to us on the Community Development Block Grant and the Home Investment Partnerships Program amended for the 2021 Action Plan and the 2020 through 24 Consolidated Plan. Tia?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and City Commissioners, members of the community. My name is Tia Brasa from the Planning Department. I don't have a visual presentation tonight. I'm here to represent item 39A, which is a public hearing for our 2021 HUD Action Plan. This proposal, which is outlined in your packets, is to add a new activity to the action plan. This activity responds to the city's 5-year plan goal of assisting vulnerable populations. In this case, it's underserved youth from low to moderate income households. The proposal includes interior renovations and fit up of an existing building in North Fargo for teenage youth programming. We propose up to $85,000 of our CDBG allocation, which comes from a 13% overage on one of our 2021 property acquisition activities. As you may recall, CDBG funds do need to be reallocated fairly quickly in order to meet HUD timely expenditure requirements. So with our public service type activities already being at their budget caps, this particular money needed to be reallocated. Hello? Oh, got lost for a second there. Okay, so this particular money needed to be reallocated toward another property acquisition or public improvement type activity because there are no limits on how much of the funding can be spent on those types of activities. So in combination with that and not yet attempting our 5-year plan goal of assisting vulnerable populations because we've been primarily focused on COVID response, this project seemed like a really good fit. No action is required tonight because we're still in a 30-day public comment period. This is for public hearing purposes only. Final approval is scheduled for the October 18th City Commission meeting, so we'll be back again for that. And we have not had any comments received yet. You can see in the packet how people can reach us via email, phone, coming to the office, writing if they have any comments on this particular proposal. The project applicant, Faith for Hope, is here this evening to answer any questions. And with that, I would ask you to open the public hearing or ask questions if there are any. Thank you.
Is there anyone in the public who wishes to address this amendment? Anyone wishing to speak? If not, we'll close public hearing. Do I need a motion or do I have to wait for next time?
Nope, the motion will be on October 18th.
Thank you. Good way to redistribute the funding. Special assessment list for Business Improvement District, the bid fees. Steve Sprague to explain.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Annually, we are seeking approval of the bid assessment. This year, we have 640 parcels that are in the assessment district for a total assessment of $595,000. We have not heard any comments back from any of the people that are being assessed. It is a fair amount of growth this year, but the growth is coming from the new development, the new buildings that are coming online. And so other people's assessments remained pretty stable. We did have to move things around a little bit, but overall, things remain pretty stable.
Is there anyone present who wishes to address the business bid fees? Anyone wishing to speak? I close public hearing. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Preston.
Aye.
Strand.
Yes.
Gary.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Aye. Second item, special assessment for unpaid utility bills.
Mayor and Commissioners, this is, there are 40 properties on this list, and all of those properties are in the area where we are serviced by Cass Rural Water. And so if they weren't paying their water bill, Cass Rural Water could shut them off and collect the water payment. Unfortunately, we are providing the services for sewer, garbage, storm sewer, forestry, et cetera. And we don't have a way to collect other than to collect it through the property taxes. So I don't know if there's any other questions or anything. The ordinance was created a couple of years ago to allow us the ability to do this. If we don't collect this unpaid utility by adding it to the property tax, then all the other property owners in Fargo would be essentially paying their bill.
So just for the public, this list runs from $933 down to $310.
That's correct.
I'm assuming that's it. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak to their unpaid utility bill? Anybody wish to speak? If not, I'll close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second. And I
Any
have a
discussion? Commissioner Preston.
So Steve, obviously these people haven't paid their utilities. What's the advantage of adding it to a special assessment? Is it a long-term legal process relating to the property? Or, I mean, if they didn't pay it there, why would they pay it if it's a special assessment?
Sure. So it is essentially added to their property taxes. If they were to not pay their property taxes, then eventually the city would end up with the property. Yeah.
All right.
And I think all of these are pretty close to a full year without payment. They get their monthly statement, and there's really no other way to collect on these.
Commissioner Strand.
Thank you. Steve, if I recall, in one of our previous discussions on this topic, we had some smaller dollar amounts for some people, and we were having discussions about if people are facing hardships, we can work with them. How does that all shape up?
Yes, absolutely. Anytime that somebody's having difficulty, we certainly work with them. They just need to be in contact with our office. We have pretty close contact with some different agencies that will assist people. And we can always make payment arrangements, that type of thing. But the 40 people that are on this list, we haven't heard from them all year. So.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Preston.
Aye.
Strand.
Yes.
Gary.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Aye. COVID-19 update. Desi Fleming to address.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Statewide COVID cases continue to increase and are just under 4,000 active cases. For comparison, North Dakota had just 637 active cases 2 months ago, so quite an increase. Cass County currently has 755 active COVID cases, which was up over 200 cases from 2 weeks ago. Our county reported 6 deaths last week, with a statewide total of 17 deaths for that same week. Hospitalizations have increased by 37 individuals since the last report and are totaling 157 people statewide. Health systems continue to be experiencing critical bed capacity issues across the state. We have 2 of the 6 tertiary hospitals in North Dakota being Sanford and Essentia Health Systems. As of this morning, there are approximately 7 staffed ICU beds, 11 non-ICU beds, 1 PEDS ICU bed, and 3 non-ICU PEDS beds available between those 2 systems. This data comes from the website ndhelpc.org, which is the website facilities across the state enter into daily regarding bed availability, and accurately reflects true capacity as compared to the hospital bed data on the North Dakota COVID dashboard. The age category with the most active cases in Cass is again the 30 to 39-year-old demographic, followed by the 20 to 29-year-olds. Last week, 25% of the new COVID cases were in those under 19 years of age. But the reality is that all age groups have active cases at this time. Cass County, as well as the entire state, remains in the high transmission category according to the CDC metric. Except for a few of the school systems, there is little to no mitigation strategies or requirements happening within the community. Because school transmission reflects but does not drive community transmission, it's vitally important that communities take all necessary measures to limit the community spread of COVID to ensure schools can remain open and safer for all students. It's a conflicting message when we focus on the schools for these efforts, but much of the community at large is not willing to put in the same efforts. CDC released an advisory last week for pregnancy and COVID vaccination. There have been 125,000 COVID cases in pregnant women with more than 22,000 hospitalized and 161 deaths nationwide. North Dakota has seen 14 hospitalizations of pregnant women, none of which were vaccinated. North Dakota still has one of the worst COVID vaccination rates across the country. Our lowest fully vaccinated rate in Cass continues to be the 12 to 18-year-olds at 45%, with the 19 to 29-year-olds at 47%. 30 years of age and up rates are 54 and above, and increases with each age group. Initial doses are up approximately 1 to 2% since the last report 2 weeks ago, so very slow going at this point. Booster doses have started in our area and currently are available to those who have the Pfizer vaccine for their initial series. Other eligibility criteria are adults who are 65 years and older, adults with underlying health conditions, or adults at risk for an occupational or institutional exposure. Fargo Cass Public Health is hosting booster clinics on Saturdays in October by appointment. We gave 674 booster shots this last weekend. Just to note, although boosters are important for keeping many safer from exposure risks, however, they are not going to impact or get us through the pandemic faster, as that will still be dependent upon those who have yet to be vaccinated. There are 70 providers in Cass County for COVID vaccination. For availability, please see vaccinefinder.org. Thanks.
Any questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Strand.
Thank you, Mayor. And Desi, you know, ongoingly, thank you to your department and your staff and your people and your army of folks doing this work on behalf of the public. It can't be easy. I'm just going to make a comment of one of my concerns, and I know we have lots of concerns, but we have public events, yes, and we have sporting events, we have big gatherings, but with many of those, we don't always necessarily have a governing entity that has the authority to implement mitigation efforts. The Fargo City has done it on our turf. The Cass County Commission has done it on their turf. The Fargo School Board has done it on their turf. But the West Fargo School Board has not. And I know they're in West Fargo, they're a separate subdivision, but I'm going to remind the public, 48% or so, 48% of the people, the students in the West Fargo School District are Fargo residents. So we have about 5,000 of our students that are in a school system that I wish they would step up their workplace safety efforts and step up the mitigation efforts for everybody's greater benefit. And I know the state laws were changed and the legislature stripped the governor and stripped the state health officer of making these decisions, but did in fact relegate it down to the local government subdivisions. I, as only one voice, challenge the West Fargo School Board to do better for our students and workers and people in their system.
I take it, Desi, he didn't ask a comment from you, it's just he's making the comments. Any other questions of Desi? Thank you. Commissioner Garrick and Municipal Airport Authority Chair Eric Lynn would like to discuss Municipal Airport Authority's 2 mills. Eric, do you want to come up to the speaker? Be on the other side.
Mayor, if I could, before he speaks, just real quick, just to restate, on September 20th, the majority voted to remove the 2 mills from the airport. Today, I'm going to ask that we amend that action. First, I'll make a short comment, then I'll have Eric speak to the issue, the president of the airport authority, Then I'll ask Eric Johnson to again clarify any issues that we might have after the fact, and then I'll make the motion. So the short comment that I have, we as commissioners received a letter from the North Dakota Aeronautical Commission, and it gave a list of 4 projects that were completed. I think it was last year. I'm willing to be corrected on that, but we'll just call it last year. The local share of those 4 projects was, well, I'll say that the total value of those 4 projects was over $24 million, $24 million. The local share, that would be the airport share, was $1.1 million, which is about the 2 mills they're asking for at the time. The state funding was $1.1 million. So that didn't come from Fargo, it came from the state. The federal funding to match the amount they put in was over $22 million. So for the 1.1 million, the 2 mills that this airport received, the city of Fargo received $22+ million that came from outside of the city. That's the federal and state share, the vast majority being the state, or I'm sorry, the federal. So just with that in mind, I'll ask Eric to, again, kind of reiterate why this is important to the airport. And then, like I said, I'll have Eric Johnson answer any questions about the process.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioners, for having me again. Just want to introduce myself for anybody who doesn't know me. I'm Eric Lind. I'm the Chairman of the Airport Authority this year. So I just want to kind of talk to the city taxpayers and the residents and let anybody know, just in case there's any question on where does that money go. So we get 2 mill levies. Right now it's about $1.2 million and some change. And where does that go? We use the mill levies for capital improvement. We use it for construction and buying new equipment. Like somebody else said, City of Fargo is growing significantly, and we needed to continue to add infrastructure. So in the last year, we added 17 acres of concrete so that we could build a cargo ramp to bring in UPS and FedEx to ease their operations. That eases, it facilitates the delivery of all your on-demand kind of e-commerce stuff that you're ordering online. Even if you're not a traveler and don't use the passenger terminal part, you're still using facilities that came in through the airport. A lot of the businesses in Fargo use on-demand warehousing, so they don't have to have these huge warehouses. They can just order it and it's there in a day or two. Most of that comes in either through trucking or through the airport, but definitely the airport is involved. No mill levies whatsoever go towards compensation of employees or benefits to employees or retirements or anything like that. All it goes to is capital improvement, building projects, and buying new equipment. So that's where the money goes. Why do we have so much money? Right now we have over $35 million in cash right now. And that seems like a gross amount of money and still asking for more. And the reason for that is we have to have a reserve. And we have about $15 to $20 million in reserve that the FAA would like us to have. So we have to keep that amount of money. And then we've also got some COVID grants over the last year. And there are very strict guidelines on what that money can be used for. And most of it says you are not, and I think all of it says you cannot use it for construction. So you can use it for operations, you can use it for things like that, but you cannot use it for building projects. And so we have to then take the mill levy money and we have to put it aside in a different account, in a different reserve account, and pledge it for construction projects only at this time. So yeah, it looks like we have a lot of money, but we also have that money earmarked for our next big projects that are going out the door here. In 2023, we're planning a terminal expansion. Like the other gentleman who spoke earlier said, we have more airlines coming in to Fargo. And the more money that we have, the more airlines that we have coming in, the more competition that is driven and the lower the prices are to the taxpayer and to the traveler who lives in Fargo. Competition is a great thing, and we are out of gate space. We have some gates that need to be, we have some concrete out in front of gates 1 and 2 that need to be replaced. And most of the concrete out there gets deteriorated from all the chemicals, the de-ice fluid, and just using it a lot in the aircraft operations on it. And it's deteriorated. It's at the end of its life cycle. So in order for us to take all that concrete out, we're going to have to shut those gates down. In order to do that, we're going to have to turn airlines away. So we're trying to build new gates to have them move over to the new area so that we can take the old gates out of commission and get them fixed. that is going to drive more capacity in Fargo. Fargo is growing, the airport is growing right along with it, and we need those extra gate spaces in order to facilitate that growth. I think Frontier just came in the other day with an Airbus 321, and it's about 200 people, and they were pulled up at a gate that was had seats for 50. So we have problems with the existing gate seating that we have, and we need those new gate areas just to have those new people. If we get a weather event, it cancels a bunch of flights, we get people piled up on each other, and there's just no place to go. So the terminal expansion is definitely needed. It's definitely going to make airline operations go smoother here in Fargo and make it better for everybody who lives here and the visitors who come here.
Eric, just one thing.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Or the way the cameras are set up is it looks at you. If you're looking at the commission, it's a better photo op for the public outside the room. Hope that everybody can see you in the room, but
Roger that.
it just give you that little, little twist that might make you look better at home.
Thank you, sir. Next thing, we need to expand our parking. Or the goal that we have is to get more parking closer to the terminal. Nobody likes to pull their bag through the snow all the way at the end of the parking ramp. So we're trying to find a way that we can get new parking spaces closer to the terminal. And I would like to find a way to get those covered and get some covered parking out there. All the parking meters where you get your tickets, all that stuff has been failing in a big way in the last year. And it's at the end of its life cycle. In fact, it's past it. We've been having to go on eBay to find pieces to keep our existing system going. That costs a lot of money to replace that. We have a replacement system coming here in the next few months, and hopefully get that online very shortly to make the parking situation better. And it also encourages more businesses to come to Fargo. If people can get in and out of Fargo easier through the airport, that brings outside money into Fargo for other businesses to spend here, and it also takes our people out to the rest of the world to go see. We have a local share that we have to spend, and like Commissioner Garrig said, it's usually 10% is what we have to plan for, and then 90% hopefully comes from the federal government. The state sometimes kicks in some money, but we never know how much money is going to be available from the state and what they're going to do. So we always have to plan 10% of our local share, and then if it happens to be less, that's outstanding. But right now, everything that we go forward has to be 90 and 10% kind of difference. We have a different business model than kind of the city does too. So why do we have so much cash? We save the money up front. So like instead of going into debt for these projects that we do, we kind of follow the Dave Ramsey model, right? So you save money, you get the money in your hand before you go out and you do a project, and that costs millions of dollars. So, and even if we do have to borrow money for this terminal expansion, the last number we heard was 50 million, but that was before steel went up 140% and concrete went up 80%. So the $50 million price tag that we were kind of quoted last year could be turned into 60 or 70 million, and we don't really know what that number is. So the more we can save right now, the less we'll have to borrow in the future. And the less we have to borrow, the less money we'll pay in interest, and that will save the city of Fargo taxpayers directly. So how does it benefit the taxpayers? We get more legacy airlines coming in here. We get more federal and state local dollars coming in. It's kind of the golden goose. You know, if this airport brings in a lot of state and federal money, but we got to feed the goose. You know, we gotta keep that goose going to keep that stuff coming. It's like priming the pump. We get better infrastructure. We get prettier terminal. We get more gates, more airline competition, lower ticket prices. That's kind of the biggest complaint that we get from a lot of the travelers, is that it costs so much to travel out of Fargo, and this is the way to do that. Bring more airlines in, bring more gates in, and then we have more capacity for all those people. The FAA provides a tremendous amount of oversight on the projects that we do. We are not allowed to spend money frivolously on my personal agenda. I couldn't build a building out there on the airport and put my name on it for my legacy, and the FAA would shoot that down very quickly. They provide a tremendous amount of oversight and what is only approved, what is reasonable, and what is necessary for us to do. They require a lot of audits and so forth, and so they make sure that everybody is being good stewards of the money at this time. what else do I want to say here? I'll just wrap it up real quick. I strongly urge you to reconsider your position on the mill levies. It is a very, very good deal for the city of Fargo taxpayers. The small amount of money that you put in gets a tremendous amount of money back in return. And I would strongly ask you to reconsider your position and keep the funding going for the airport authority. It's a very large percentage of our income, and without that, projects are going to have to go by the wayside. So anyway, I will open up for any questions. Does anybody have any questions? Be happy to answer anything.
Commissioner Pepper.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. So you're the chair of the airport authority. Who is the director of finance for the airport?
Well, right now we do our finances in-house, and it is audited by Ide Bailey.
So to give you an example, so the director of finance for the city is Kent Costin. Here's a good one. For the Fargo Dome, the director of finance is Susan Thompson. For the director of finance for the airport, do you know who it is? It's nobody. So the oversight for Sean Doberstein is Sean Doberstein.
Incorrect, sir. It is the FAA.
No.
The FAA is the oversight for us.
Just for debate, let's let Commissioner Pepper finish,
yes, sir.
then you can respond.
So just to clarify, that's a very big deal. The financial oversight for the airport is inadequate, to say the least. I've asked for an audit for many years, still not happening. So to me, there's lots of red flags. A finance committee, do you have a finance committee?
No, sir.
Don't have a finance committee. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? The budget for this is multi times bigger than the Fargo Dome. The finance committee for the Fargo Dome, Kent Costin, Bruce Grubb, and me, plus a group of other people. I'm telling you, man, there's more red flags on this than the Chinese embassy. And to have us, at the end of the day, do you know who it falls on? Not any of these people. It's on us. So we better wake up, because we are sitting on something that could blow up in our face. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Eric, did you want to respond?
Yeah, I would love to. So like I said, the FAA does the oversight for us. We get audited multiple times a year. So all federal grants get audited, all state grants get audited. We do audits through Ide Bailey, through an outside agency, and the city of Fargo did our audit last year. So all audits that were done was included in the city of Fargo budget and audit last year. So I would say that we were audited very, very heavily and very, very well. And there has never been any findings that we have done anything that was not correct. So,
Mr. Preston, you have a comment?
Yeah, Mr. Lind,
Yes.
you mentioned that my concern all along here in the last few weeks, month, has been looking at the reserve fund and the size of it. You mentioned that the FAA requires 15 to 20 million in reserve fund. Can you tell me when that went into place? And when I'm looking back on previous years, 212 to 217, I'm just looking at the last 10 years, 212 to 217, you had under 13 million or under 15 million.
sure.
When did that become a requirement?
It's not a hard, fast number that you are required to have this much in as an advisory. Hey, we would like you to have this much in reserve. So it's not like a compliance issue. We would like you to have that for things. So all of our projects that we do, we generally front load a lot of the architecture and the engineering costs and all that stuff. And having that reserve gives us the ability to go ahead and do those projects immediately without having to wait for bonding or to borrow money. If we have to borrow money, it generally falls upon the city of Fargo as the backer. If we have to do a revenue general obligation bond, it would come on the city of Fargo to back that bond. And it would take the city commission, it would put liability upon you. So providing the mill levies keeps that distance away from you where you're not obligated to satisfy our bond. We probably will have to do a bond in the future, but by saving the money up front, it keeps a lot of that at bay.
I understand. Can I continue? Sorry. I understand that whole argument, but on the other side of it is a reserve fund that is quite large, 35 million, as you mentioned, and whether that is the best use of taxpayer dollars. And that's been my concern. So between 2017 and 18, it looks like the reserve fund jumped by about 8 million. But your projects now, if I'm looking at this correctly, jumped from 183,000 up to almost 5 million. So it seems to me that this reserve fund is getting built even with fairly large capital improvement projects happening. You know, I think it would be real helpful, at least for myself, to understand what's going on if the specific projects were listed out and what the projected federal participation and the local participation would be. You throw out a lot of huge numbers, but a lot of that is federal dollars. So the general public, as they look at 35 million, or myself, as I look at 35 million, a small portion of those projects is going to come from that.
So what's your question, ma'am? You'd like the projects laid out and the costs?
Yeah, I mean,
have
more
that for you.
information about the capital improvement projects, what the projected local participation rate is. My question buried in all of that was, what happened between 17 and 18 where the reserve fund jumped by about 8 million? Any idea?
I don't know off the top of my head, but we do have all of our projects listed out until 2037 for the next 15 years, and they are on that, and we have emailed that to each of the commissioners, and it has the price of the project and the local share expected. So I'm pretty sure that if you don't have that, I can get that for you immediately.
And I apologize. What I'm more interested in knowing and understanding is how the reserve fund has tripled in the last 10 years. So if there's local participation, that's 10% of the total, this reserve fund is building, and it's building at a pretty fast rate.
Sure. So may I answer? So it would look like it is a very big amount if we were not planning for huge expenditures. Okay, because we have these huge projects coming, we have to plan and we have to save some money and get those funds for those projects to go forward. That's why if we weren't planning for any large construction, I would agree with you. I would say, yeah, we don't need the money, but we have huge expenditures coming. Yes.
So the projects that are coming up in this next year or two, are they much larger than what you've been doing in the last 10 years?
Yes. Yes. The last really large project that we probably did was 2007 when they did the runway reconstruction, and they had to do a bond for that. And before that was 2004 when they did the terminal expansion back in 2004. They also had to do a bond for that. So in the last 20 years, or we'll call it 15 years, we haven't had these huge projects. We've had much smaller projects. So we are going forward with a very, very large and very, very expensive project coming forward here. So that is why we need the money. We need the money, and it is a huge portion of the local share that is going forward.
So other than the terminal, what other large project is coming up this next year?
What other projects do we have, Sean? Did you want to comment to that? So Sean Doberstein is the executive director, and he knows this like the back of his hand. So I defer to him.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. So Commissioner Preston, in answer to your question, that's on the capital improvement plan that was provided, I think, 3 meetings ago. We're going
Remind
to
me, please.
Okay. So we have an estimated $16 million project to replace the terminal apron. That's the concrete that is on the north side of the existing terminal right now. That's estimated to be $16 million, and will be done over a 2-year period, approximately $7 million next year, $7 million the following year, and then a couple million that is in engineering. That's most significant. And you see the terminal expansion project on there. We only had 35 million on the CIP that was provided to you, but we're being told now that that's probably going to be in excess of 50 million coming up, hopefully breaking ground the fall of 2023 or spring of 2024. The terminal area study for that to justify and get approved by the FAA is underway as we speak. We look at runway extension project coming up for east-west runway. I mean, we're looking at some real dollars. The total amount that's on the CIP right now through 2037 is over $192 million in projects.
I don't mean to dominate the questions here, so I'll stop.
Mayor?
Oh, Commissioner Sharon, sorry.
Thank you. Sean, maybe, or Eric, as long as you're up there, Commissioner Gehrig always asks people who are wanting to participate with the city for funding partnerships if these projects will continue without the city support.
Will they continue?
Would they continue without the city's millage, this project list?
So you can look at today and say, if you took the mill levies away from today, would it affect the projects that we have on the plate? Probably. More importantly, would it affect the future? You know, we are building a airport for the city of Fargo for the future. And by reducing the mill levies today, we're discontinuing federal and state and local share money for tomorrow. That is probably more important. It would be a huge detriment. If we took it away today, we'll be able to find a way to do it. But tomorrow, tomorrow's in question. So would you want to say anything else, John?
Yeah, I mean, some of the projects, Commissioner Strand, that are on the CIP that were provided to you, required to do because of the condition of pavement. So we're required by the Federal Aviation Administration to maintain a certain pavement condition index. That's why this terminal apron is going to be replaced, hopefully starting next summer and then the following summer. The same with a runway or a taxiway or any other apron operating surface. We're required by the FAA to maintain those in a acceptable operating conditions so that they're safe and meet Part 139 standards. So the answer would be is they would move forward, but probably with a multi-year type operation. So if we don't have the local funding, it might take longer, it might cost more, it might be over a 2-year period instead of maybe one single construction season. It would just take longer to fund those.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Gehrig.
I'll just make the motion. Eric, make sure I'm saying it correctly here. I move to amend the motion made and approved on September 20th with respect to removal of the 2 mills from the airport authority and to approve said 2 mills.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Commissioner Pepcorn.
So, Mr. Chair, to me, that changes the whole motion, and the motion was to approve the budget. And so to me, you have to revisit the whole thing. You can't just cherry pick one item out of that. And so that's highly inappropriate. I believe it will be legally challenged because it's not what we should be doing. Otherwise, now we can go back and start cherry picking anything. If that's what you want to have happen, then that's what will happen. Thank you.
I think we should have originally split the question at that time, Commissioner Pepcorn, to approve the budget and then approve the mill levy reduction. So you do bring up a good point, is that those both are actually very much tied together. Any other discussion?
Mayor.
Commissioner Strand.
Thank you, Mayor. As all of you know, a couple weeks ago, I voted in favor of the removal of the 2 mill levy for the airport authority. And I've given it quite a bit of thought since then. We've all worked at it a lot since then. And of course, it's a process going forward, and we're in the middle of change. So in my opinion, one of my biggest concerns is to not misstep in case there's a possibility of that while still going forward positively. So I am supportive of the airport. It's separating itself. We have agreed to that. Separating itself from the use of the city as far as in HR services, accounting and finance services, and so on. What I hope will happen going forward, and this is what I was wanting to interject earlier in this process this year, but we just didn't quite get across that hurdle. What I hope to happen going forward is that there will be an improvement in the relationship between the city and the airport, a long-term improvement. That there has been tension between the parties for years, and that just simply needs to be stepped up and improved. On the next agenda item, we will receive a status report as to how that separation process is going. Part of that process will be an amendment of the MOU that was just signed by the airport and the city in January 2020. I expect that amended MOU will contain language that will address the request to the city commission that the airport authority will need to make every year for a mill levy. I will expect that MOU will provide a process for the airport authority where the airport authority cannot simply assume whatever they ask for will be granted, but rather will require the airport authority to show the city commission what they need and why they will need it, and further, that the city commission can then properly and proactively schedule such mutually agreed upon financial commitments accordingly. So knowing we're in this transition phase, we aren't quite over that agreement phase yet. We do want to have a partnership that's positive going forward. We do have a communication breakdown, and there are assumptions that we can't afford to let happen. But we need to get past those differences of opinion and make sure, in my opinion, we don't misstep. I have concerns about all of these things that have unfolded and the way that they've unfolded, but bottom line, I believe sincerely that it's really critical right now that our focus be on creating those agreements, crafting those understandings, embedding them into an MOU that commits us going forward. And knowing we don't have all that right now in place, I'm going to vote in favor of this motion so that we're not making a big mistake in the meantime.
Commissioner Pipkin?
Mr. Chair, so I'll just summarize what we're going to vote on. We're going to vote on increasing the mills $2 million. So we're going to take $2 million in property taxes. A lot of those property taxes are paid for by seniors on a fixed income. And we're going to give that $2 million to an entity that has no financial oversight. And they have $36 million in the bank. So we're going to take that from our property owners and give this to this entity. They have no finance committee. They have no financial director. And that's what we're going to approve. And we have no idea. We have nobody overseeing anything. That is financial irresponsibility. And the worst thing is, at the end of the day, it's on us.
Mayor?
No, I'm talking.
Go ahead, it's fine.
What a huge tax on our homeowners that's totally unnecessary. Thank you.
Commissioner Preston had her about first. Or did you not?
No, I didn't,
Oh,
but I
fine.
do have something to say. I'll
Okay,
follow.
Commissioner Shine.
Commissioner Pepin, you are absolutely right. And it really is important for all of us to understand. This is about a 3.5%, 4% increase or so to the property, not an increase, but it is paid for by the property owners. So there is significance in that. We are the responsible agents for our people. And that's absolutely critically important. Here's what I would suggest we do. Let's take your concerns that you've exactly expressed about financial management, oversight, audits, and financial leadership. And let's express that and build that as best we can, our expectations into our MOU going forward. I agree with you, those are absent. And I would champion it going forward, and thank you for helping us take that impetus into the discussions too. It's needed.
Commissioner Pepcorn.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a suggestion on what we should do. We should keep 2 members of the airport authority, John Cosgriff and Jim Capitan. We should replace the other 3, and we should remove the executive director of the airport authority at the airport. Right now, what's going on is unacceptable. The airport is the city of Fargo. It's the taxpayers of Fargo. It's theirs. It's not the airport authorities. And that's how they act. And there is no financial oversight over the public's money right now. That's what's going on right now. I've asked for the mayor, our finance committee, we've approved audits and nothing's happened. What is going on? That's what I'd like to know. They talk about these audits. That's at 30,000 feet. Ken Costin can talk about that. I've asked for an audit. The leases, when you start seeing what the sweetheart leases are, that's borderline illegal. And that's what's going to get expelled once we get into the weeds. But for some reason, it keeps getting dragged out. I wonder why that is. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
To address Commissioner Pipcorn's concern, there is an audit that is going on. We've been finding it, trying to find out what Commissioner Pipcorn would like out of that. I would challenge him. I was at a meeting with him and Ken Costin, and we were trying to figure out what he wants in his audit. We're trying to address that respectively. You get all the elements that you want to make sure you have. And indeed, we do audits with Bailey. We've talked to principal partner, and we are setting that up. It's not dragging along. We're trying to get that ready before the MOU is finally done. So that is anticipated in the next 30 to 60 days. Kent is working on it with the Bailey people. And any commissioners that want anything out of that audit, please tell us, and we will get it. So that will not be changed. Commissioner Preston.
So it's unfortunate that the MOU discussion didn't precede this. I have said right from the beginning also that the procedures of the information or the process for the information that gets presented to us about capital improvement projects should be going through the same scrutiny that any other capital improvement project goes through in the city. And it doesn't seem to be the case. I just, going back, and I'm sitting up here trying to figure out what I'm going to do here. 7 million, as I was listening to the large projects that are planned for this next year, the local share would be about 7 million at the most, probably less, if the state kicks in some money. It's not going to bring the reserve fund down to what it was even 5 years ago. That's what I struggle with. And we'll be adding, or you'll be adding another 2 mills on top of that. So we're talking, an enormous amount of dollars in a reserve fund that still bothers me. And without the process identified for how these projects are going to come through a process and scrutinized, yeah, I'm not convinced that that's going to happen.
All along in the discussions about airport authority and our relationship, we've had difficulty with communication. That comes out again and again tonight as we discuss this. The CIP process was given to us a couple of weeks ago. Eric has done another thing to show us the revenue, show us expenses. We've had more communication by the airport than I can remember for a long time sitting on the commission. We're starting to move some places to discuss needs and wishes. The airport needs to change. It needs to increase what we have for skyways. We need to increase the ability for public to get in and out of there, embrace many of the plans you have. The parking area has to get better meters. There's a lot of improvements that we need to do. And perhaps we just need more discussion because our commissioners don't always know what's going on. But we sure do know all the CIP projects in the city of Fargo, which we have many. And we push Brenda to tell us every summer, how well are we doing on these? And we discuss them in some detail. So it shows me, again, we need more communication to do this. Eric Lind, I was a little distressed because you sounded on Friday on a radio show that you didn't really need the 2 mills, but tonight you're coming back and asking us to reconsider. And I've been, motion initially on my budget was to have those 2 mills in there. But I concur, Commissioner Strand, we need more communication. And going forward next year, do not expect the 2 mills unless we have a lot of communication. And let us consider the things that the public wants. Let's open up to public dialogue. What does the public want? What do they think would be better? If we're going into lifts and we're going to Uber and that's all that's going to land at the airport, boy, let's not worry about parking. Let's change our parking menu. But let's try to figure out ways to make our airport the most competitive there is in the Midwest area. Because I want those people coming to Fargo and I want them people to travel out of Fargo and I want lower rates. So I think we got a couple goals that we got to work on, but number one is communication. And I stress that as if anything comes out of tonight's vote, let's communicate better. Any other questions or dialogue? Roll call vote.
Gary.
Yes.
Strand.
Yes.
Preston.
No.
Pepcorn.
No.
Mahoney.
Yes. We'll take a 5-minute break and come back to learn about the MOU on the airport. Back to order. We're going to have an explanation, which we wanted to have, of the status of the report on the term sheet and the MOU between the City of Fargo Municipal Airport Authority. Eric Johnson and Mike Redinger are going to explain.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I'll just provide a very brief update on our internal discussions within our finance, IS, and HR departments as it relates to our upcoming transition between the city and the MAA. And I just wanted to provide just a very brief update. I'll say on the finance side, we're exchanging information back and forth with the MAA. we're working to just ensure that there's some access that remains into early 2022 with our financial systems as the MAA continues to work within a new platform for financial management. On the IS side, we just noted recently here, and I was talking to Ron Gronenberg, our IS director, that the MAA recently completed an RFP for technology services. There was a local award there to S&L Computer Services. And so we'll continue to work with the MAA staff and S&L on a transition plan that will be provided to the city IS department. And so we'll work on that between now and the end of the year. And then lastly, on the HR side, we were visiting just today earlier, just about the employee transition, the city employee transition to MAA employee transition. And we are working backwards from a date of December 26th, which is going to be when the new separate payroll system is launched for the new MAA employees. And so what we're going to be doing on our end within the city HR department and administration is to begin scheduling what we're calling pre-exit interviews. These are going to be opportunities for us just to talk to the current employees that are within the city's pay plan about pay and benefit transition as they move over towards the MAA side of the ledger. And so we most recently had HR and the city attorney's office work on a draft release that will allow for the exchange of information to move back and forth. And so that will really help make sure that the employees are well cared for in this transition. And so as questions continue to be received, our HR department will continue to assist when whatever questions come up with the employees. We're going to assist the new vendor that the MAA has identified, Pro Resources, with any other transition items that they need. So we stand by, we're ready to help here in the last quarter of the year to make sure that this is a transition that really works for the employees and looks out for them and their best interest. So I just want to provide that brief update. Then Eric will talk about the MOU development. So thank you very much.
Well, the discussion we just had about all of this alluded a lot to the MOU. Maybe just a minute to talk about what the MOU currently is. When the Airport Authority was created, shortly thereafter, there was about a 3-page agreement entered into. It was amended just a year later. This happened back in about 1970, and for 50 years, this 3-page agreement sort of established this relationship between the city and the Airport Authority. At least as far as the city providing some assistance and some support. And by more from practice than really anything in an agreement itself, things unfolded and developed. Finances became more complicated. Human, HR services, pension benefits, health benefits all became a lot more robust in the city and the airport as well along the way. Then along comes the need for information services, IT services, and that those are all being provided by the city for the last 50 years. And then during some negotiations that started, I think approximately 2018 and culminating in this more robust MOU, multiple page MOU that was inked by the city and the Airport Authority in January of 2020. And again, the bulk of that was to create a little bit more detail as to how this relationship exists between the Airport Authority and the city of Fargo. Talked about the HR services that were being provided, how the airport employees would be treated as city employees for certain purposes, but would be governed by Sean Doberstein and the Airport Authority Board and other aspects of that. So what we're talking about now, as a result of the negotiations between the city and the Airport Authority that occurred earlier this year, we have sort of a working term sheet. What Michael just explained was sort of the process that has been made and the progress that's been made in what we call as a separation. So and really what I lead up to is to make it, try to emphasize the idea that separation doesn't mean that the Airport Authority will be totally separate from the City Commission or the City of Fargo. By statute, there is always going to be a relationship between an airport authority and its city, the city that created it. The difference here when we're separating is the separation of the support by the city in these services. And so the new relationship that will be formed by an amendment to that January 2020 will talk about what this airport will need to do going forward. They will sort of be in charge of their own employees. They'll provide their own benefits, their own policies regarding vacation pay, sick leave, and things like that. They'll have their own arrangements for IT services, their own arrangements for financial services, and so forth. But the MOU will sort of talk about what the interaction will be between the airport authority and the city commission, in particularly. And it might add that there are at least, there's more than this, but there are at least 3 main components of interaction where really the city commission oversees the airport authority and has direct involvement in the governance of the airport authority. The first is in the appointment of the 5 members of the airport authority commission. So as those roll off every year, the city commission always approves either an extension of a term or a replacement of an airport authority commissioner. Secondly, really the airport authority has to live off of its own revenues, because if there are any bond issues, any large loans that are where the airport authority needs to issue bonds, those need to be approved by the city commission. Or if the city commission didn't want to approve them, it would go to a citywide vote at least. But the city itself would have to approve those bond issues. One of the reasons for that is because ultimately those are need to be general obligation bonds backed by the full faith and credit of the city. And what that means is if there were for some reason a deficiency in the bond payments, then the city commission would have to issue a mill levy to make up any deficiency. And the third aspect is the thing we're talking about tonight, is that the airport authority every year has the authority to come to you and make a request of a mill levy, whether it be a half a mill, a 1 mill, or up to 4 mills. But it's under the statute, it's the city commission's authority to accept that request or to reject it accordingly. So those are statutory framework items for the relationship between the city commission and the airport. The airport authority wanted to take the first stab at proposing an amendment to the MOU, but our term sheet really identifies the things that we expect to be included in that. The first thing on the term sheet is the process of presenting a budget of the airport authority and making a presentation in a timely manner to the city commission as to what they're going to be needing in terms of budget needs and what kind of requests they'll be making. And so the MOU is intended to express exactly what the city's expectation is and what they are agreeable to. The same is true as far as an annual report of an audit, an annual report of employee benefit costs, pension costs, a safety report will be provided as part of that. These are all the things that we're expecting to be in the MOU. Financial, employee, and operational policies will be reported on. And so all those things will be in the new amendment or the new amended MOU. Lastly, what's been happening by practice for some time is also going to be embodied in the MOU, and that's the idea of some transparency that thus far the airport authority meetings have been videoed, just like these meetings are videoed on the city's website. They're making arrangements to be able to host those video meetings, their public airport authority board meetings by live stream. And then also the agenda packet will be made available so that anybody watching the live stream will be able to see the documents that are being acted upon while the meeting is occurring. Those are also comments in the term sheet, and we expect those to be a part of the MOU. So in short, the amendment to the MOU will get rid of a number of pages that dealt with the employment issues, the HR issues, financial issues, and so forth, and allow them to separate from the city in that way. But what will not separate will be that oversight that the city commission has that I identified, and also what the parties are agreeing upon going forward as far as reporting back to the city commission. And really, Commissioner Strand said it during his comments. The intention of the negotiations earlier this year that resulted in the term sheet that's resulting in this process is the hope that the relationship, the tensions in the relationship will improve, that it'll put the responsibility on the airport authority to communicate with the city commission enough so that the city commission grants their requests for mill levy and so forth. So hopefully the new MOU and the new relationship will sort of put the responsibility on the right party to move the ball forward.
Will you send that out to all the commissioners after this meeting, please?
Yeah, well, when
The
we
draft you
receive
have?
when we see the draft, we can certainly circulate that draft.
Okay.
Yes.
Any questions? Mike, you have anything else? No?
Nope.
Okay.
Thanks.
Item 43, adopt resolutions authorizing the sale of properties located at 419 3rd Street North and 1 2nd Street South. Jim Gilmore to explain.
Thank you. These two properties were identified in the Riverfront Development Plan as ones that would be sold for development over the next several years with a plan to try to begin that this year. There are two properties that were acquired for flood protection. One is to our north, former school district warehouse. A portion of that warehouse was demolished for to relocate 2nd Street as well as build the flood wall. And a portion of the building remains in the public right of way now as the street was replatted. So really for this to be redeveloped, that building should be removed. The second, wonder if we can go down. Is the Park East apartment property located at Main Avenue and 2nd Street. I've got a rough outline there of where that would be. That was an apartment complex, and it was that apartment complex was removed and levee constructed. You can kind of see it there. And this is a remnant of about 54,000 square feet. So these are both remnants that were remaining after flood protection projects. I think development potential is high on both of them. Per our Diversion and Joint Powers Act, money from the sale of these properties will go to the Diversion Authority, and the Diversion Authority must also approve the sale of the property. What we're doing in the process now is the first step was we have consulted with the Diversion Authority. They were comfortable with the format of the RFP and the sale of the property. The step tonight would be to authorize the sale of the property. If you approve that, there's a draft RFP that would go out with that. We would advertise and distribute that RFP. We would receive proposals. The review of those proposals, I expect that we will use the Renaissance Zone Authority to confer with them, since both of these are in the Renaissance Zone and could maybe requesting Renaissance Zone Authority incentives. Once the City Commission then would select which proposal they felt would be best, we would have to go back to the Diversion Authority to get them to sign off on the agreement. And then finally, we would develop a purchase and development agreement that you would approve at the very end. I think the timing is important that these go out now so we can get some proposals. If we're going to get anything constructed in 2022, the developer would want to get their architectural team under contract and start review or start designing prior to the end of the year. So the recommended motions are to take this first step of authorizing the sale of the property. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of Jim? Commissioner Strand.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Mahoney. Are there any project types that we do not want?
I think the Riverfront Development Plan looked at both of these more likely for housing or some type of mixed use. I don't think you'd want maybe just a warehouse there. But the downtown mixed use zoning allows a wide range of uses provided they meet with the design standards for the downtown.
So if I might continue, is an RFP flexible enough to give us that latitude to be nimble?
Yes, the RFP says that you can, first of all, you can reject any and all proposals if you don't like them. And it looks at, it's really the best project in addition to the amount of the offer.
So just to clarify, so bottom line, top dollar doesn't guarantee they're going to get their land purchase.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other discussions? Can I have a motion?
That's a move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Preston.
Aye.
Strand.
Yes.
Gary.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Yes. Item 44, recommendation to advertise request qualifications proposals for civic and prosecutorial legal services. Mike Rudlinger to explain.
Thank you, Commissioners. On September 13th, last month, City Attorney Eric Johnson provided written notice of his intent to terminate the agreement that he maintains with the City of Fargo on behalf of his firm, Eric Johnson and Associates Limited, and that would also co-terminate at the end of the year, not only with the City Attorney's appointment per city charter, but then also the agreement with the law firm. Fargo Municipal Code at Chapter 4 has the discussion and contains the discussion about the appointment procedure of the City Attorney, and so I included just a brief overview of that section in the cover memo that I provided to the Commission. The other thing I did, just for the benefit of the Commission, was provide really 3 different procurement methods or approaches should the Commission wish to pursue one or a different option tonight. But I really focused the attention really on RFP process for civil and prosecutorial services. The suggested motion this evening is actually to proceed with authorizing a request for qualifications and proposals. I've drafted both of those documents. They're contained in the packet. I'm happy to answer any questions that you would have. I thought just in the interest of time, we wouldn't necessarily walk through them paragraph by paragraph, but if you did have specific questions, I'm happy to address them here. We've also included a summary of services that are currently provided by the incumbent law firm. We are planning to attach that with the RFPs as they are distributed. And so when they go out, if you are a prospective applicant, you'll be able to see exactly what kind of services we're talking about. It's really a wall-to-wall type relationship, both on the civil side and prosecutorial side. What we will do, should the Commission act this evening to approve the RFPs, distribute these broadly throughout North Dakota. I have made contact with the North Dakota League of Cities General Counsel, and we're going to utilize the City Attorney's listserv that the League maintains, as well as use our city website where we host our other RFPs and document submittals. And then we're also going to send a notes to local law firms as well, encouraging their interest and participation in the process. I just want to make one note too. You'll see that there are 2 RFPs here, prosecutorial and civil. And the reason for that is simply that you may have cases where a firm might be interested in applying for one book of business, but not the other. And so we want to encourage that. So if in fact you are a law firm XYZ that has expertise in both areas, you'll actually be submitting 2 proposals to the City of Fargo for consideration, one for prosecutorial and one for civil. So again, the suggested motion this evening is in fact to approve the RFP model and approach for civil and prosecutorial, and to authorize staff to proceed with the next stage in the process, which is advertising per the timeline that's contained in your packet. The timeline, just as a brief overview, is that we want to see proposals back in approximately 1 month from tomorrow on November 5th, schedule interviews by mid-November, and then have an appointment decision recommendation either on the November 15th or the November 29th City Commission meeting, so that we have some time in transition here before the end of the year, working with the new firm or individual in trying to work with Mr. Johnson while he was still here. So again, in the interest of time, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, but that's just a brief overview of all the documents that are contained in the packet. Thank you, Commissioners.
Any questions, Mike? Commissioner Strand.
Thank you, Mayor Mahoney. I'm just curious, if we did go down this path of RFPs for civil and prosecutorial services, does that rule out us down the road exploring an in-house legal department?
Thank you, Commissioner Strand. That's a great question. And the answer is no. This is just a process that gets the ball rolling, knowing that time is of the essence here and that we need to get to the street with something. But no, you would not be precluded from creating that in-house office down the road. If that's an interest in, say, a year, 2 years, a future commission can certainly do that. The term in the agreement, no different than like Eric's firm today, is going to be a negotiated term between the commission and the city and that law firm and or individual. And so in that case, if you said that you just wanted a 2-year agreement for professional services, that's what you would do. And then you could have that discussion at a later date. But knowing that really time is of the essence here, we thought the RFP model was the most expeditious way to keep the ball moving here so that we are seeing services provided by someone, a firm or an individual on January 1.
Do you have a motion?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Pipcorn.
Aye.
Gary.
Yes.
Strand.
Yes.
Preston.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Yes. 45, applications for property tax exemptions with improvements made to the building. Do I have a motion?
I so move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Pipcorn.
Aye.
Gary.
Yes.
Strand.
Yes.
Preston.
Aye.
Mahoney.
Yes. Item 46, recommendations for appointments, reappointments to follow boards and commission, or the following boards and commission: Housing and Redevelopment Authority and Human Relations Commission. Is there a motion?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Is that for both? A and B?
Pardon me?
Is that A and B?
Yes.
Okay.
That was A and B. Roll call vote.
Strand.
Yes.
Preston.
Yes.
Pipcorn.
Aye.
Gary.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Aye. There were some questions some of the commissioners had about some of the violence in the community at the present time. I asked Chief to give you a report tonight if you want. If you want to forego that, I will ask him to prepare for next meeting. What is the pleasure of the commission? Next meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chair, can I ask a favor? The city attorney recommended that we just move to recess. I'll be appealing our action that we took tonight about the motion that I made to approve the budget and then the included mill. And so I'm going to challenge that. So I just want to have that opportunity. So it's just a motion to recess.
Just on the question of that, Commissioner Pepcorn, who are you appealing to?
What my recommendation during the break, Commissioner Pepcorn asked me how he could sort of challenge what happened with respect to the airport vote. What I recommended to him was that I don't know exactly what opportunities there are for him to challenge, whether it be something within the commission itself or there's an outside legal challenge. I'd be happy to look into that. It struck me that it may be that something needs to happen before the meeting is adjourned, much like we have with the motion to reconsider. I'm not suggesting that's what the solution is, but there may be something like that. And if he wanted to protect his options, it might be helpful to request a recess to a date and time certain. I would assume that would be within maybe 2 days or so, but that at least give me an opportunity to explore his options and come back. And it may be, it's very possible it may be that you simply reconvene after the recess to simply adjourn. But if there is anything that can be provided, I'd be happy to research that for Commissioner Pepcorn, as I do for all of you, and give him the benefit of that research.
But do we not have to vote on that then to allow him to do that?
You would have to vote on recessing, and I suggest it be to a time and date certain so that you don't have to worry about notice issues. I don't know what that time would be, but I might recommend Wednesday afternoon, 4 p.m. or something like that. That works.
But if the commission voted to recess at this time, would that take his ability away?
No, if you recess without adjourning, then
Okay.
then the meeting is still just being continued. You're just taking a recess of longer than the 5-minute recess you take at the time.
So
of
do
the
we
hour.
need to vote on that?
Yes, you do.
Okay, Commissioner Strand.
Thank you. I appreciate Commissioner Pepcorn's concerns and desires to explore his options, but parliamentarily speaking, if we recess, the only benefit to that would be if you were in the voting majority and you wanted to advance a motion to reconsider in the same meeting, but you weren't in the majority. So I'm not sure what his options would be. That he can't reconsider. What would his options? I don't know, but
I recognize that, and I thought about the fact that if he's not in the majority, he won't be able to make the motion. But again, all I said is I don't have encyclopedic knowledge of all the possible actions, and it might take me at least a few minutes to sort through what his options are.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Preston.
so I'm confused. Why can't he rescind or amend?
He very well may be able to do so, yes.
Yeah, I mean,
We
I
do,
think-
we
I
do have
think-
a deadline for the budget is one of the issues that's on my mind.
yes, yes,
So,
I understand that.
Wanting to take that time.
That's why this whole process stinks, to be honest with you. I mean, it's another example of bringing something forward that's already been acted on, which totally changes the previous motion. So I would say rescinding or amending should be extended to Commissioner Pepcorn, just like it was tonight. But
So, Mr. Chairman, can I just make so what has happened tonight will change the commission forever going forward in a huge way, because now you can go back and pick out something that you want to vote on again. That's never happened until tonight. And so it's a big deal. And so I don't think we quite realize what happened.
I presume if I get a second to that, I really has to address it. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. So now the motion, Eric, as I would understand it, is we can recess, but we're not adjourned.
Right.
You will come back with a legal opinion of his concern, and the commission will formally adjourn on Wednesday.
We have 4 p.m., yes.
And Ken Costin, can you come to the mic, please? Do we have any concerns about the budget? Do we not have to have the terms of the budget in by October?
10th.
Yeah, North Dakota state law, Mayor, requires submission of the certification of the tax levies by October 10th.
So we have time to do this. We can
Time
do
is of
this.
the
and It won't
essence.
harm the budget. And if any changes come up on Wednesday, we can address it as there goes. Okay. Any other discussion? Commissioner Strand?
So are we meeting Wednesday? I'm not able to, but
So, Mr. Chair, the question, so to me, we could do this all by phone if we had to, but that, it isn't like we all have to be here in person. That's my understanding. And so more than likely, we won't meet. If Eric has something that we need to, then we would all be contacted and we could do it by phone if we had to. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I think Commissioner Pepcorn, you have a legitimate concern because we always thought reconsider was a way you did this in the past, which would take the majority voter to bring something back for reconsideration. And that's usually to protect something. If you had something that you wanted to protect, you came back, wanted to reconsider because you were convinced elsewhere. And I can remember the 10 Commandments. We had a great debate about that. And one day everybody was one way, and the next day everybody was the other day. We reconsidered and we did vote differently. But I do think that it just struck a little different because the person in the minority was able to bring this issue back to us. And it is hard because sometimes you as commissioners have to make tough decisions. And it's hard on a building project or on a budget that's multi-million, over $100 million budget, that to have that then come back to us, because to me, the hardest thing is the mayor to get the budget passed. So it's always hard to bring it back for reconsideration because you never know the next time what might happen to you. So I'm in agreement to have a legal opinion assessed here and have Eric come back to us, and we'll adjourn on Wednesday if that happens. But would like you to have your rights respected and see what the terms are that we come up with. So any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Preston?
Aye.
Strand?
no.
Barry?
No.
Mahoney?
Aye. Now, I can't say we're adjourned, so we're in recess.